want to learn how to wholesale real estate and flip houses? Join Lex Levinrad on the Investing in Real Estate Show and learn how you can get started in investing in real estate today. Lex has flipped over 1,000 houses, and he's ready to teach you the steps that you need to take to move one step closer toward achieving your goal of financial freedom. And now for today's show.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Investing in Real Estate Show. This is your host, Lex Levinrad. On today's episode, I'm very excited to bring you a good friend of mine. His name's John Carcone. And I originally met John at our mastermind called Collective Genius about 4 years ago. So welcome to the show, John.
Thank you, my friend. Happy to be with you. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time. I'm really stoked to be talking to you today. And I just wanted to cover some of the stuff. I've seen tremendous growth from you over the last, 4 years or so. So I'll give everybody a little bit of an intro. John's got a company called Four Brothers Buys Houses based out of Washington, D.C., and he's also a licensed realtor. And John, tell me a little bit about your transition. I mean, I know you started in 2009, but tell me how you went from this small single family wholesaler doing 5 or 10 deals to doing crazy numbers. What was it? I think I saw you did last month, like 500 or something. So tell me a little bit about that transition and how that, worked out for you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, man. So I got into this, around 2009, 2010. I had no background in it or any reason to go into real estate. I just had an interest in trying to work for myself. I just saw that after a few years working for a company and moving up to sort of a mid-level sales manager, that I wasn't going to be able to have the kind of income and earning potential I wanted, and I wasn't going to be able to have the kind of freedom that I wanted if I kept working for a company. So I realized I had to do something on my own, and ended up landing on real estate and just kind of went all in on that. So it took a few years of really just smashing my head against a brick wall and not having any success with it, and trying all sorts of different things to finally flipping one house. And then I met the right mentor who really helped me and changed markets and kind of got me going. And so, for a while after that, I was just doing, maybe after my second or so year, once I got it going, I was doing 10 houses, then got up to maybe about 20 houses a year for 3 or 4 years.
And is this strictly all wholesale?
This was all rehab at that time, actually. So I started out basically all rehabbing.
Okay.
Just used GCs,
right,
because I didn't have a project manager. I didn't even know that project managing was a thing. And so I just I was able to build relationships, have a couple of GCs I worked with, do 20 houses a year, end up, making 400 grand maybe, after my minimal expenses, and was able to get it pretty systematized where it was pretty chill, and had a pretty decent, kind of balance with it, where I was able to travel and do some fun stuff too.
Okay. And then where was the point where you started transitioning to wholesaling?
That was probably in 2017/18. So kind of around the time I joined Collective Genius, where I was like, all right, well, let me see if I can make this into a real business, just because it was a lifestyle thing for me before. I was making good money. I was traveling and having fun. And I'd done that for a number of years, but I guess I felt ready for a challenge, just to see if I was capable of making it into a real business. And so I joined Collective Genius kind of shortly after that, which definitely was a big help too. And I kind of started wholesaling at that time, and it was a slow ramp up. Like I went from doing, a handful of wholesales and mostly rehabs, 20 or 25 rehabs, to eventually, where we're now 100% wholesale. And so it just slowly kind of ramped up. Like last year we were 75% or 80, no, we're probably 85% wholesale last year. And then prior to that, in 2019, we were more like 70. So we just kind of slowly ramped up to more and more wholesale and less rehab.
Okay, so like in the years, like let's say from 2011 to like 2017, were you predominantly just doing fix and flip about the same volume?
Yeah, I was doing fix and flip about the same volume. I would say up until probably 2016, I was doing anywhere from 15 to 25 rehabs, just with GCs, just with me and a bunch of virtual assistants. And I was buying everything pretty much off the MLS, because you could still do that at that point. So I didn't have any of the market. I had very little. Well, I was doing some mail, but almost all my deals were coming from the MLS. So yeah, that was from that
Wow.
period.
Okay. And then you decided you joined CG, and that's when you started doing more wholesaling. Is that when you started getting heavy in the direct to seller marketing?
Yeah, it was probably around 16 or 17. So right around when I was trying to really make it into a real business. And it also happened to be when it was getting a lot harder in my market in DC to find stuff on the MLS. So I was like 16, 17. And so I
Right.
kind of had no choice. I was, pulled into it like most of us, to start. You kind of had to do direct to seller stuff. And then I also was doing a little more wholesale. And then I also hired my first true full-time employee in the summer of 2017, sort of right before I started with CG. So that was a big tipping point into making it like an actual business.
And that full-time employee, was that an acquisitions manager? What kind of role was that?
That was a lead manager and
Okay.
assistant. So it was like half lead manager, half assistant for me.
All right, awesome. And so was that lead manager, like, did you have like an office, or was this all virtual?
Yeah, he was out of my house. So I was
Okay.
always kind of virtual. And so I worked out of my house. I had a separate bedroom, fortunately, that he was able to
Okay.
work out of. And yeah, a kid that went to University of Virginia, just out of school. So totally
Nice.
fresh with no experience, somebody that, I felt had good character that I could kind of train. And so, yeah, he was my first one. And then at the beginning of 2018, we got an office space, and that's when I brought in my friend from college on a partner track in my
Okay.
business, and then also hired like a real US based like assistant, and I think one other US based person at that time. Plus we also were trying out having a brokerage to capitalize on the leads that we couldn't buy.
Right.
So 2018 was like doing all the things,
It
basically.
sounds like it.
Yeah.
Sounds like 2018 was definitely a transition, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Now you've mentioned like US-based assistants. So I'm assuming that you had some VAs on board
Mhm.
up until this
did.
time. Okay.
Yeah, I've always been big on virtual help and leveraging the fact that people can make what is a really good salary for them in another country, but it's really inexpensive for us. And so, yeah,
Right.
even when I was like the one-man show, I had, 3 or 4 assistants, including one who was like a 45-hour a week, like right-hand man kind of person
Right.
who did a lot for me, so I always had that kind of help. And, I continue to use a lot of virtual employees, kind of to this time.
So what's your take on a lead manager being US-based versus having a VA as a lead manager?
I think it's totally fine to have it be a VA, but the key is that I tell people is it's not about if it's it's not about what country they're living in, or what state they're living in, or if they're virtual or local. In my view, the only thing that matters is, are they a native English speaker? So not English as second language. Did they grow up speaking English? Because for a lead manager role, the nuances of the conversation, them being able to speak and respond super quickly and like fluently, is super critical. So I would never recommend anyone hire a non-native English speaking lead manager, but can you get a native English one in like Colombia or Nicaragua or, any variety of places? Absolutely. And I think
Right.
that's totally viable, especially when you're starting out, as a way to get a lead manager and have it be something that doesn't, totally kill your budget and make you all stressed out because you've got some big
Sure,
salary.
sure, absolutely. All right, so basically, 2018, you got some office space and you started, I would imagine, ramping up the marketing substantially and
Mhm.
like direct mail and everything else.
That's right. Yeah, that was the year I started to do kind of big time marketing, and certainly CG, just seeing what other guys did there had an effect on that. My first time dropping like 50,000 mail pieces, in a month, which
Right.
I thought was like insane. I never heard of that before I joined CG, but you get used to, and there's good and bad to it, but you get used to, much bigger numbers.
Sure, absolutely.
And
Well, it puts you out of your comfort zone, so you see people doing,
yeah,
when you're in your local market, you think you're top dog, and then you go to something like CG and you see people doing just crazy numbers. And so tell me what that transition was like for you from what you were doing before. Like, let's say before you started dropping 50,000 mail pieces, before that, like, let's say the year prior to that, what was your marketing looking like? What was your budget, and how much were
Mhm.
you spending on marketing?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I'm giving kind of off the cuff because my memory is frankly terrible. So
Okay.
just
I mean, I
like
know a lot of it was mostly MLS, but were you doing any direct mail at all?
Yeah, I was. So I did direct mail on and off actually probably since 2012 or 2013 actually, but limited. So I would do maybe like 5 to 10,000, but still, for kind of
Right.
a newbie type decent 5 to 10,000 pieces a month. And I would do it for a few months, and then maybe I would stop for a few months, pick it back up again. So I did that kind of all throughout from like, 13, 14 until 17, let's say, or 18.
Right.
And then I was probably up at maybe about 2017. So it was basically just me and then a full-time employee for half that year, my first one. And I was probably spending 10 to 15,000, I would
Mhm.
say, a month in marketing. And it was pretty much 100% direct mail. And I
Right.
was doing the sales appointments, going and closing the deal.
Right. So you were basically taking the calls and going on the appointments, or the employee was the lead manager. They take the call, they just book the appointments for you, and you were going on the appointments.
Exactly. So second half of the year, it was that way that you said, where he took the call and then I went on the appointment. First half of the year, I was doing everything. And so that
Okay.
was the year I was 2017. I was trying to see if I could net $1 million. That was like my big
A big
goal.
number. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, for that
Yeah.
year. And so,
Awesome.
so I was working like 70 hours a week, really just to see if I could, see what I could
Going
do.
going pedal to the metal, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly.
So for those of you that are kind of new, maybe you've never wholesaled a deal, or you're trying to get into wholesaling, or maybe you've done a couple of deals, take note on that, right? Because basically there's nothing wrong in the beginning when you start out, doing direct mail, taking the calls, going on the appointments yourself. But at a certain point in time, you're going to realize that you could be making a lot more money if you had somebody answering that phone for you. And then eventually you may transition into wanting to get an acquisitions manager and having someone go on the appointments as well. Now, John, so tell me, like, when you went big time marketing, you started doing like 50,000 mail pieces. What was the first like big like aha moment for you? Like, did you instantly just see like a tremendously much bigger amount of leads, or what was the big like change?
I didn't. No, I mean, like, so I had maybe ramped up to maybe 20,000 pieces a month, let's call it. And mail was my biggest channel beginning of 2018. And then maybe like later part 2018 was when I did like 50. And I switched from like letters to postcards. So I was like, all right, let me just try this high volume, low quality piece strategy for a while. And, I thought it was going to really blow it up because it was way more pieces, multiples of what I had sent any month previously. It didn't really work that way. Obviously with like a lower quality piece, you generally get like a lower response rate. So that was gonna be part of it. And mail was getting a little bit more competitive or whatever. So yeah, it wasn't like a super game changer. Like I was able to hit, a 3 or maybe 4 times ROI on the mail, but nothing spectacular. And it wasn't like a huge, boost to the lead stuff. But around that time, I was also kind of added in, kind of started to dabble in like some, I think we started like with some text, outreach, started with a little bit of PPC stuff, started with a little bit of SEO. So I also kind of started to branch out into other channels as well. So I wasn't just relying on the mail, and, all those things combined definitely helped get our lead flow up quite a bit, especially because we were trying to monetize that with the realtor brokerage thing that we were
Right.
trying out, which ended up not working. But, we ended up getting like, a few hundred leads a month, 300 leads a month, I think, kind of at one point. And so that was way, way more. Before it was gonna be like 50. So between the more mail, I got a few more, and then just the other channels, I was able to really, get the lead count, up quite a bit.
Gotcha. And so that like doubled or tripled your numbers essentially?
Yep. Yeah, it about did. I mean, what's interesting is that the state of the market matters a lot too. Like in 2017, I did like, I think I did like 1.7 top line, something like that in 2017, just with me. And then the half of the year, one guy. And in 2018, we actually, that was the big sort of, learning experience year / we tried a lot of stuff that didn't work year, where we probably ended up a similar top line number, something in the high ones, but with
Mhm.
an office and with realtors and with 3 more full-time employees and a lot more spent on marketing. And so I ended up netting half of what I did in 2017, and the top line numbers were sort of similar.
Right.
And so I think, that the market was just a little more challenging to find deals was, I think, part of it. And then, but most of it was just, we're just kind of throwing a lot of spaghetti at the wall to see what stuck. And it turned out a lot of the shit that we threw just didn't stick pretty
Right.
much,
Right.
and ended up that we just spent money that we didn't get a return on. But, we learned a lot for the future.
Yeah. So basically, what do you take on text marketing now? Do you think that's a viable channel?
I do. Yeah, I
Okay.
think it's a viable channel now. Yeah, I mean, I know a lot
Yeah.
of people that have success with it. We still do a little bit of it and have some success with it. So yeah, I think it's a viable channel. Mail is particularly difficult in our market, at least. It's
Yeah.
gotten,
Very
it gets
competitive.
harder every year. Yeah, it seems
Yeah.
like, and so yeah, I think
Well,
texting is super viable. Yeah.
Well, I think when you've had like a 13-year run up in real estate, like we've had, and you've got a lot of
Hmm.
newbies that have entered, and there's just become more and more competitive as more and more people enter. So it's kind of that's what I've seen, happening. Now, you at some point transitioned from going to having the office to moving to a virtual environment, correct?
Yep. So we were virtual because it was just me, and one person, 2017, 18 office, and kind of that was when we tried to make it. That's when we just threw a lot of money at it and just kind of tried to see if it was going to work out and try different things. And then 19, we got rid of the office. We let go of
What
a
made
couple
you lose the
people.
office?
So I personally, I didn't have fun going to an office every day.
Yeah,
Like my
right.
partner was the same. And part of the reason why I think I want to work for myself originally was so I didn't have to go to an office every day to work. And
Right,
then I ended up,
you leave a corporate job so that you don't have to get dressed and show up at 9 to 5 in an office environment, and then you find yourself back in that environment. So, how was
exactly.
that
Yeah.
transitioning from an office environment to having virtual, employees as far as trainings and everything? Did you find that was an easy transition or a difficult transition?
It was easy. Yeah, for us it was quite easy. One of the guys had been with us for a couple of years, so kind of, we kind of trusted him, and he kind of knew what he was doing, so that was easy. And I had actually hired a couple virtual people in 2018, along with the full-time kind of local ones that we ended up keeping, so it was no change for them. So for us, it ended up, there were only maybe a couple people, who were used to coming in, who now didn't come in anymore. So it wasn't really that many. And yeah, we had no issues with it. Our basic philosophy is to treat people like adults, and they have to, produce and perform to certain standards. And if they don't, then it's not a fit, and we'd let them go. And if
Right,
they do, then we're gonna leave them alone.
right.
And if they need to go do dry cleaning or go to the gym or do whatever they have to do, I mean, it's not my business, as long as they're sort of producing and getting done what they need to. So that's kind of always been our kind of philosophy.
Gotcha. Awesome. And now, are you buying everything just over the phone, or do you still go on appointments for everything?
We do. Yep. We've always gone on appointments, all these last few years we do. So we still do 90%, 80% face to face, so we're big on that, not to phone is, super viable way to do it. It's just going to be a lower converting, higher volume kind of deal, whereas you're going to get a higher percentage of what you go on face to face, but it's a lot more time, effort, and energy for
Right.
people, so just a trade off. But for us personally, my my partner, who's the main acquisition manager, is there, so there's really no reason not to.
Sure. So basically, you got better rapport building when you're going out on those appointments.
100%. You're just going to convert higher. You're going to convert a higher percentage. But so, for example, like, let's say you can do, in my view, it works like this. You could do like 10. Let's say you can do 20 in-person sales appointments, and you're going to convert 50% of them. Or
That's a pretty conversion number right there.
yeah, we screen our appointments pretty hard. You know what I mean? Actually, so we can talk about that too. But like, or the other option is, maybe you're doing by phone, and so you can do twice as many or 2.5 times as many appointments. So now you're doing 50, but now you're only converting 25% of them. But that number still may be bigger in terms of number of deals than when you were doing in person.
Sure,
So
absolutely.
you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? So I
yeah.
think it's just kind of a, like all things, it must be tested, for each business, each market. I think the makeup of the team and the salespeople matters. I think the market matters. So I think it's a very worthwhile strategy that is good to test if it's appealing, to try to do the
Sure.
appointments virtually.
And when you say screen pretty hard, are you looking for like multiple pain points in order to go on an appointment?
We still do kind of the old school thing where we basically want their price to be close to what we need it to be to buy it,
And
that we're
that's
able to get to on the
and,
phone.
and you're establishing that right on the phone before you even book up that appointment.
We are. So like we actually close, it's not 50, we probably close about 70% of the appointments that we do, which is way too high. Like, that means we're not doing enough
That's
appointments.
unbelievable.
But it's just, so it's kind of similar to the virtual appointments versus in-person thing, in my view, where like you can go on a lot more appointments and you're going to get more deals. it's just going to be more time, effort, and energy and a lower conversion rate. Or you can screen it a lot harder. You're going to get less deals. You're going to get less revenue without a doubt, doing it this way. But just the kind of effort and energy piece and how much staff you need to conduct the appointments is less. So we're always kind of going for like the more efficient, easier, lower brain damage type kind
Right.
of model, basically. So it's our company and kind of personality preference, to do that. But it's not something I would recommend, I don't think.
Right. Well, that's very different to what a lot of other companies do, and I think that works very well from the perspective. But what do you do if somebody, like, let's say the house is worth 200, and they say, well, they want 200? Do you just say, okay, well, it doesn't look like we're a fit, and you move on to another lead?
That's right. Yeah. So, I mean, we take into account how much equity they have, so if it's that 200,000 person that wants 200, if they own, let's say some other factors, right? So let's say they owe 200, or sorry, they want 200, it's worth that. Let's say they owe nothing, so it's free and clear. Let's say they're, 60 plus or 65 plus or something. Let's say the house needs, significant repairs or hasn't been updated in the last like 35 years. And they have a real reason to sell, like there's an actual thing happening that's causing them to sell, and they don't sound like they're like shopping it around or talking to a bunch of realtors or something. So then there's a chance, it's still probably a fairly low chance that we'd go to that one, but there would be a chance. So
because there is a pain point, right?
Yeah, there's a pain point. There's equity. They're the right profile of person. They seem to have the right level of like personality and sophistication to where they would want to consider selling to a investor versus a realtor. So it's kind of just a 8 or 10 kind of criteria points that we're kind of evaluating, but it would still be low likelihood, even if everything else was really good, that we would
Right.
go to that, because we want them to at least be able to take some kind of discount. I mean, maybe if they said, I'll take 160 and it's worth 200, and they had all the other like sort of positive factors that make them a fit for our avatar, that we know sells houses to us, then we would
Mhm.
probably go to that one.
I see. Okay.
That
And
makes
so
sense. A little
now,
complicated, but
right,
hopefully
it
that makes
sounds
sense.
so right, but I mean, I understand the concept. What you're saying is basically you got to see some kind of pain point or some kind of reason for you to go on that appointment.
Yeah, and they have to fit our avatar.
Right.
The
Yeah.
profile of person who we know generally sells to an investor, because this is a very niche product.
Yeah.
Like that's
Sure.
like people, I think sometimes in terms of putting this in the context of like just market and products in general of all types, is like this is a super niche product to a super niche customer base. Like
Right.
99, as we know, right? 99.5% of people, they ain't selling to an investor, right? They're selling to a realtor because that's what makes sense. It doesn't make sense to sell to an investor. They sell to an investor because there's something else going on, or maybe they're a little bit of a unique, unusual
Yes.
kind of person, and they have unique concerns and fears, like
Right.
they're not often, not always, but many of them are not quite typical people.
No, 100%. I would agree with that.
Right.
Absolutely. Oh,
And
yeah.
so we're providing a niche product to a very niche customer base. And
Right.
so, so our avatar and our profile of who that person is and what they sound like and the things they say, you just kind of want to try to refine that, as best you can over the years as an investor, so that each year you're getting smarter, so
Right.
that you're, so you learn from your past data, as to how you can, be more targeted.
Right. And I think, well, that's, a lesson for business. And I know you post about that quite a bit, but a lesson for business is, if something's working, you leverage it up. If it's not, you change it, you switch it out, right? And you got to learn from your previous experience. So I saw that you had a post, you did like 500K or so, like last month or something. And a lot of that, you talked about relationship building and co-wholesaling with other wholesalers. Can you just tell me a little bit about that and how that works?
Yeah, yep. So we did like 5 or 600 grand in profit last month, which was, and to be fair, that was the biggest month that we've ever had.
That's a huge month. That's just
Yeah,
phenomenal month.
that was, it's not hard to be profitable, when your top line on a month, you know what I mean, is that big. I feel like where people get in trouble more and where we feel like we're not enjoying it is where we're trying to, save pinch pennies to be profitable. It's a hell of a lot easier when you just grow the top line. But to answer your question, yeah, the co-wholesaling piece, yeah. So of the 2.2 million we've done top line this year so far, in terms of gross profit, about 800K or 850 is from relationship building, we call it, which is both co-wholesaling and it's building relationships with realtors. But 80% of it is co-wholesaling. So just to be simple, let's call it co-wholesaling. And so that's basically where we're just partnering with other investors in the market, primarily wholesalers that are doing marketing. They're getting leads. Maybe they're getting the occasional deal, kind of onesie, twosie, or a handful of deals a year. We're helping them close the deal if they need help on that, actually close their leads. for them if they want us to. And then we are also doing the sales appointment if they want us to, closing the deal. And we're selling that to our buyers list, which is, arguably the best in kind of our area. So they get higher prices. And even after the split, we find a lot of times they're making just as much, if not more, even after the split by doing to our huge ass list built over 11 years than their, tiny list they just built in the last like year. And and then we also help transaction coordinate it all the way to closing. So the smartest people in my view that are doing this with us, they're just sending us leads. So they're only marketing and they're doing a little bit of that of upfront screening when the leads call in. And then they're connecting us to their leads. And we're actually scheduling the sales appointment with the hottest leads, doing the sales appointment, closing the deal, selling the deal, transaction coordinating it, giving them a check.
And are you guys just splitting it 50-50? How are you doing the split?
It varies. Anywhere from 50-50 to 70-30 is what's typical. And the 50-50 is probably the most typical. And the 70-30, that would be probably more if the investor was bringing us an already under contract deal and they already had a buyer's list. And so we would do a 70-30 in that case in their favor, potentially.
Right. Oh, it sounds like a good market there because you got a lot of new wholesalers. They don't have a huge buyers list. They don't necessarily know how to do all the transaction coordination. All they have to do is go out there and market for leads. Now, how they do the handoff of the marketing for leads? Are you like connecting them into your like Podio, or are they just sending it over and then you just have your lead managers or acquisition managers take over from there?
Usually send it over in whatever format they can. Usually it's just like a spreadsheet or something. And then the lead manager loads it up into our Podio, tags them, to the leads. And then the ones that are the hottest, he's going to try to jump all over those to work those leads, try to get the sales appointments done, just like if there are leads. And then if it comes through, we know from the lead tracking if it was one of ours or if it was, from one of our like joint venture partners.
What do you think is a good, like in your situation, for relationship between a ratio of lead manager to acquisitions managers? Like how many acquisitions managers, how many lead managers do you guys work with?
So again, we're a little different here. We definitely do things a bit different, which I think does make it, a bit challenging to model. But so for us, we only had one lead manager until the beginning of 2021. So when we did last year, 2.6 or 7 million top line, and we did 20, I think, or 40 deals that closed. It was with all through one person. He closed every single one, and which is insane. And this is my partner, that I brought in 2018, a close friend from college who has equity in the business. So he's like an owner. So it's basically
So he's the acquisitions manager essentially.
Yeah, he's our top acquisitions manager. And then just this year, we brought in a second one who kind of rose up through the ranks in various inside sales, outbound positions, with us. So he's our second one. So we got two right now. And then we have, why don't we call it four inside salespeople. So one is like a lead manager, one is dedicated just to this relationship building stuff. We've got one that helps with like texting and some other like marketing that we do. And then we have one that like is kind of a backup inbound one that does stuff for the database and that kind of stuff. And then we just hired a number of new part-time ones. We're kind of trying out to try to build out that inside team to hopefully grow it. I'd like to have 6 or 7 probably on the inside sales team, all just feeding leads into our 2 acquisition people.
Wow, that's awesome. Sounds like you got a business model that's definitely working. Now tell me how you transitioned. I know over the last couple of years, I saw you transition into mobile home parks and started getting a lot of mobile home parks under contract. And I know that you keep some of those and you wholesale some of those. So tell me a little bit about how that works.
Yeah, so in let's see. Yeah, so kind of in 2018, so like most people, I got into real estate for cash flow. The dream was when I didn't know anything, I was going to buy some rentals and I was going to keep buying rentals and I was going to have passive income that covered my living expenses and I was going to be financially free. So that was always the dream. And then a lot of us get sucked into this like transactional, like churning type flipping and wholesaling thing, which is good for generating cash, but a lot of times we just can't get out of it. So I wanted to get that cash flow going. So in 2018, I went to different like boot camps. Mobile Home Park University has a boot camp, and looked at buying apartments and stuff, but I decided on parks. And at the end of 2019, I finally bought my first one after a year and a half of, again, beating my head against a wall, very similar to when I started single family, trying to make it a business. And I bought my first one in 2019. And then again, I met the right partner, similar to the single family story. Met the right partner at the beginning of 2020. 20, and we bought another 10 parks or so, 8, 10 parks that year. Then we bought another 6 or 7 this year. So yeah, I have 14 or 15 parks and then one self-storage facility. So it was like no traction, no progression at all for a year and a half or 2 years, and like very frustrating and a lot of wasted money. And then finally got that one deal, which really helped, and then was able to get the right partner, which really kind of exploded it.
And the partner, was that like a capital partner? Was that like a partner that was doing all the work, or
He
what?
was yeah, so we actually just came across each other on just one of the Facebook groups for mobile home park investing. There's a few that are like fairly active, and we both happen to have a deal in the same small town. And so he just called me up and said, "Hey, I've got a deal in the same little tiny town that you do. It's the only 2 parks pretty much in the town. You know, why don't we buy them together?" And he was already very experienced. He had like 15 parks at that time. So I was thrilled to have the chance to partner with someone experienced and learn from him. And
Right.
he does the management of it. So we both kind of like split the money needed, the equity needed. We both went on the loan, and then he managed it. And then I kind of brought, one of the deals to the table. And
And
so we
would
partnered
you
that
say
way.
that bringing him on board would have been like instrumental in your growth from growing to struggling to find that first deal to exponentially growing it?
Yeah, I mean, that was one of 2 key factors, was
Right.
finding the right partner. So I was, before that, I was pitching my deals that I was finding to people that were a little more experienced, a little more picky. Basically, it had to be like a really perfect kind of deal for them to want to do it. The partner I ended up with is a younger guy. He's a little more like hungry. He's willing to take a little more risk. And so he was just willing to try to work with a lot more deals than what these other people, that were more established, were
Yeah.
willing to do. So they were shooting me down on everything, whereas he was trying to make, these things work. And so just with a little more of a loose criteria as well, with him, that was super, super key. Yeah, that was one of the 2 key factors.
Yeah. So now I see that you wholesale some of these mobile home parks, but you keep a decent amount of them yourself,
Hmm.
and you own quite a few mobile home parks, or
Hmm.
I think like 1,000 units or something, right? So you keep what percentage? How do you decide that ratio, what you keep and don't keep, what you
Yep.
wholesale?
Yeah, it was kind of similar to how I did it in the single family business. There's really a lot of parallels. So the best stuff we keep, everything else we wholesale. So our objective is to buy stuff, is to find stuff that we keep, just like before it was to buy stuff, find stuff that I could flip, myself. And then if it doesn't meet my criteria, it's not good enough, then I'm going to wholesale it off, to try to make a little bit of money. We'll maybe do, I don't know, 5 or 10 wholesales a year. So it's not much, and it's not my priority or focus whatsoever. But, if we get a deal that doesn't quite meet our criteria, then we'll try to make a few bucks on it.
Now, when you say best, do you mean the ones that give you the best ROI and the best cash flow, or do you mean the ones that are in the best areas?
The combination, the ones that best meet my criteria in terms of like size, location, quality of the park, like the type of utilities I'm looking for. So I have an avatar, of the type of park that I want. It's got to be big enough in a good enough area. It just has to be high enough quality, across a variety of different kind of aspects of it. And then
Yeah.
if it meets that, then I take it down. And that's my goal, is to find as many of those as I can at a price that makes sense. And then if it doesn't meet it, or if the price is a little too high or something, then again, we'll try to send it out and see if we can make a few dollars.
Got it. Wow. Well, it's just unbelievable, the incremental growth from like 2018 to now is just unbelievable. Just from the time I met you at CG, sitting in that one room, and we were both doing a presentation, to now is just like 3 years, and your growth has just been instrumental. I mean, just incredible. So,
Thanks,
so for people that are listening to this podcast, especially those of them out there that are new investors or want to be investors, what do you have anything specific that you'd want to share or talk about?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I don't really like specialize in folks that are newer. I mean, I agree with one thing that a mentor of mine told me, which is that if you're going to start, so I think you pretty much have to do direct to seller marketing, certainly in this kind of market. And I think that if you're going to do direct to seller marketing, you want to make sure that as you send out your first piece of marketing, whatever it is, a letter or a text or whatever, that you have some sort of basic CRM set up. I mean, you can just use Podio, and it takes 2 seconds. You customize it, something super basic, to make sure that you're making the most of your leads and that you're able to follow up effectively on them. And I would probably, if I were starting out now, I'd probably focus on text messaging. It's sort of the lowest cost, channel.
Yeah,
for it.
lowest cost per acquisition of a deal by far.
Yeah, yeah. So, I'll do texting and I'll make sure I have some sort of basic CRM set up. And then I would just try to do what is the smallest incremental step that you can take that gets marketing out the door and the phone ringing. Until you send something out and until somebody calls you, you're not doing anything basically. So what's the smallest incremental step that you can take, the most immediate step you can take to get something out the door, to get the phone ringing and get you on the phone with the seller and get you into that like deep end of the pool where you can actually start learning and start
Sure.
to,
And
figure
I
out what you're
think,
doing.
yeah, and I think for whatever reason, for people that are just starting out, that seems to be the most challenging step. And I think it's because they're so used to trading their time for a paycheck and going to a job and getting paid for it, that the idea of actually, putting the expense of a direct mail piece on your credit card or something, people want like a guarantee. They want to know, is this
Yeah.
definitely going to work? And there is none. But if you start marketing and you start putting it out there, the phone starts ringing, and if you're not doing any marketing, you're not going to be getting any deals.
Yeah.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit about if people want to look you up, John, if they want to find out more about you, find you online, what's a good way for them to do that?
Cool. Yeah. Sounds good, man. I appreciate that. Yeah. So if people want to find me, John Carcone is my name, JonCarcone. And if you Google me, and look me up on Facebook and Instagram and follow me, I post a lot of free stuff. I post a lot of stuff about my business. I post a lot of stuff about my mindset. I'm trying to have more impact. So, follow me on that. And I'm doing a coaching product specifically around co-wholesaling, teaching my system, that we use. And then I'm going to be doing eventually one-on-one, like high level type coaching, with me personally, like for 6 months with a handful of people. So just doing it to try to have impact. And that's what I find most fulfilling at this point. It doesn't really jazz me up too much to try to make more money or buy more property or whatever. I get more jazzed up when I'm making a difference with people.
Absolutely.
As that sounds. So
yeah. Well, that's I think one of the best benefits of coaching is just basically seeing that the impact you can make on other people's lives, and the people that become successful in it and then start making all this money, quit their jobs and move towards financial freedom. That's like the best reward I think that you can get.
That's
awesome. Cool. Well, John, thank you so much for taking the time to be on our show today. We really enjoyed having you, and there were a lot of nuggets in there, guys. Find a mentor, learn how to do this. Don't be afraid to go out there and start marketing. If you employ a system and you systematically put the time and effort into it the way John has, which is, I got to tell you guys, he's, I see a lot of investors in my mastermind and all over, but the way John has this dialed in and systematized is just phenomenal, right? And it just shows you what you can be doing. I mean, 2.2 gross, and we're, not even 3/4 of the way into the year. So, John, thank you so much for being with us today, and really appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you, my friend. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Investing in Real Estate Show. Your next step towards financial freedom is to visit LexLevinrad.com. If you want to work with Lex as your real estate coach, make sure you book a free strategy session on LexLevinrad.com. We'll see you on the next episode with more ways to help you achieve financial freedom through investing in real estate.